It sits by your sink, a humble, unassuming object you touch every single day. It promises purity, health, and civilization itself. Soap, we think we know it. But what if I told you that this simple bar is a historical artifact with a dark and bloody past? A story that involves pagan sacrifices, the fat of dead soldiers, chemical warfare, and a marketing conspiracy that forever changed how we view ourselves and each other. Today, we're not talking about bubbles and fragrances. We are scrubbing away the clean veneer to expose the filthy, secret history of soap. Prepare yourself, because after this, you'll never wash your hands the same way again. Our story begins not with hygiene, but with ritual death. The most enduring legend of soap's origin takes us to ancient Rome, to a place called Mount Sapo. Here, animals were sacrificed to the gods. Rain would wash the melted animal fat and would ash from the sacrificial pyres down the mountainside and into the Tiber River. The women, washing clothes downstream, noticed a miracle. In certain parts of the river, the water had a magical cleaning power, lifting dirt and grime with ease. They had unwittingly discovered the fundamental chemical reaction of saponification, the combination of a fat lipid and an alkali ash. The world's first soap wasn't born from a desire for cleanliness, but from the grisly leftovers of a pagan ritual. Purity was born from death. For millennia, soap was not for the body. It was an industrial product. The Gauls and Romans used it to clean textiles and bleach hair, not to wash their skin. Bathing, for the Romans, was a process of scraping dirt off with a tool called a strigil, not lathering up. For most of human history, people simply stank. The concept of personal hygiene as we know it is shockingly modern. During the Middle Ages in Europe, bathing was viewed with suspicion, associated with promiscuity and disease. It was believed that hot water opened the pores, allowing plagues and evil vapors to enter the body. The nobility prided themselves on their filth, masking their body odor with heavy perfumes. Soap was a rare luxury item, produced in small batches in places like Castile, Spain, hence Castile soap, made from olive oil, and used mainly by physicians and the very wealthy. For the average person, a bar of soap was as foreign as a dragon. The great turning point in the history of soap, the moment it shifted from a luxury to a necessity, was driven not by a desire for health, but by the terror of mass death. The great plagues that swept across Europe, like the Black Death, began to forge a slow, horrifying awareness of the link between filth and disease. It wasn't until the 19th century that scientists like Louis Pasteur finally proved germ theory, demonstrating that invisible microorganisms were the true killers. Suddenly, cleanliness was no longer a matter of aesthetics. It was a matter of survival. Soap became a weapon. This is where the story gets industrial and grim. The Industrial Revolution created a massive demand for soap. Cities were overcrowded, filthy, and rife with disease. Soap was the answer. But to make soap on a mass scale, you need fat on a mass scale. And where did this fat come from? From the slaughterhouses of burgeoning cities, from the whaling industry that nearly drove species to extinction to render their oil, and from even more disturbing sources. During major wars, especially the Napoleonic Wars and World War I, fat shortages were a strategic problem. Macabre urban legends arose, claiming that the fat from fallen soldiers on the battlefield was being collected and rendered down to make soap and glycerin, a byproduct used in explosives. While most historians consider this a propaganda myth, the very existence of these rumors reveals the mindset of the era. Death was a raw material, and the line between a human body and an industrial resource was terrifyingly thin. World War I did, in fact, weaponize soap in another way. The Germans, facing a naval blockade that cut off their access to vegetable fats, developed the first synthetic detergent. They engineered a cleaning agent from coal tar derivatives, a chemical process that didn't rely on natural fats. It was a breakthrough born of military necessity, one that would forever change the cleaning industry after the war, giving rise to the detergents we use today in our washing machines and dishwashers. Chemical warfare wasn't just fought in the trenches, it was being developed for our sinks. But the true soap revolution was a marketing revolution. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, companies like Lever Brothers, with its Sunlight soap, and Procter & Gamble with Ivory, realized it wasn't enough to sell cleanliness. You had to sell an idea, a status. They pioneered modern advertising. Their ads didn't just talk about killing germs. They talked about being a good mother, having beautiful skin, achieving social mobility. They invented a new kind of anxiety, the fear of body odor, the fear of being judged as unclean or poor. Soap was no longer a health product. It became a product of beauty and social conformity. They weren't selling soap. They were selling the promise of a better, whiter, purer life. Hygiene became a moral virtue, and dirtiness a social sin. This marketing campaign was so powerful it changed the world. The demand for vegetable oils for soap, like palm oil, drove colonialism in Africa and Southeast Asia, with devastating consequences for local populations and the environment that are still felt today. The quest for perfect cleanliness led to the creation of antibacterial soaps, which we now know can contribute to antibiotic resistance. The story of soap is the story of how a simple chemical reaction was used to justify sacrifice, fuel industry, fight wars, and ultimately sell an ideal of civilization that often hid a much dirtier reality. So, the next time you pick up that bar of soap, remember its journey. Remember Mount Sapo and the sacrifices. Remember the nobles who prided themselves on their stench. Remember the plagues that forced us to come clean. Remember the whales, the factories, and the wars that provided its raw materials. And remember the marketing geniuses who convinced us that cleanliness was the path to social salvation. Your bar of soap is not just an object. It is a historical artifact, a symbol of our complex and often contradictory relationship with purity, death, nature, and ourselves. It is proof that, in order to get clean, humanity had to get its hands very, very dirty. What was the most surprising or disturbing fact you learned about the history of soap? Is there another everyday object whose hidden side you'd like us to investigate? Let us know your thoughts and suggestions in the comments. And if you enjoyed uncovering the secret history behind the most common things, don't forget to like this video. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, because there's a universe of fascinating stories, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be revealed.